She never loved him. He loved me. Those words dropped like a grenade in the middle of my husband's funeral. Delilah Hart stood up, yes, in her red silk dress, as if mourning was a runway, and let that sentence fall into the still air of the sanctuary. Every head turned, every breath caught. Even the pastor in mid-prayer went silent. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just looked at her, at the woman who'd shared my husband's bed and now wanted to share his spotlight in death. It was Caleb's small hand in mine that kept me grounded. He didn't understand yet, 10 years old and already learning what betrayal looks like in real time. Delilah took a step forward. Her heels struck the hardwood with purpose. "Julian told me everything," she said, her voice too smooth, too rehearsed. He stayed with her for Caleb's sake, but it was me he loved, me he wanted. Gasps fluttered through the pews like a storm picking up speed. My mother shifted beside me, her gloved hand squeezing my shoulder so tightly it burned. "Do something," she whispered. I didn't. I wouldn't. Delilah turned to face the congregation. Her chin was high, lips curved into something between sorrow and smugness. "He told me he felt trapped. He said he couldn't be himself around her, that his heart had moved on years ago." I could feel the stares crawling over me like insects. Pity, disbelief, curiosity. Everyone waiting for me to break. But I had broken long ago, in quiet rooms, with silent screams and receipts folded too neatly in a sock drawer. I sat taller. Let her talk. She was still speaking, spinning her narrative like it was gospel. "We planned to start over," she said, looking right at me. "After the new year. He just didn't get the chance." The audacity, the precision of her timing, as if my pain was her stage. But this wasn't her story. Not really. She thought she held the final word. She didn't know the ending. Not yet. The hush that followed was thick and trembling, the kind of silence that meant something was coming. And then it did. From the side aisle, footsteps, calm, slow, deliberate. Roland Tate, our family lawyer, emerged from the shadows like he'd been waiting for this moment all along. In his hands, a small polished wooden box. Eyes shifted from Delilah to the box, then to me. But I still didn't move. Mr. Tate's voice sliced the silence. "Miss Hart," he said, stopping beside the casket. "Julian left something for you. Per his will, it is to be opened today. Here." Delilah's confidence cracked. Just slightly. Her fingers twitched at her side. What is it?" I finally turned to look at her, one long, measured glance, and I said nothing. Mr. Tate extended the box, and Delilah reached for it with a smile. I didn't cry. I just held my son's hand tighter, like I was trying to anchor both of us to something solid while the world cracked open. Caleb didn't ask questions. Not yet. But his fingers curled into mine like he already knew something was wrong. Not the way kids know because someone tells them, but the way they feel it in their bones, like a storm they can't see but can already taste on their tongue. He looked up at me, his big brown eyes wide, searching. I didn't look back. I couldn't. If I did, I'd shatter. So I focused on breathing. In, out, again, pretending I wasn't watching the pieces of my life fall apart in front of my son. Delilah's voice still lingered in the air, sharp and sticky like sap on skin. She was seated now, a few rows behind us, but her presence was louder than any hymn. Caleb shifted closer to me, his small frame brushing against my side. "Mom," he whispered, "why did that lady say Daddy didn't love you?" My throat clenched, because he didn't. Not the way I needed. Not the way he once promised in the vows I held onto, long after they stopped meaning anything. "She's confused," I said softly, brushing his hair back like that could protect him from words that cut deeper than knives. "She's just sad." But it was a lie. And I think, in that moment, he knew. The memories came in fragments. Julian's late nights, the sudden change in cologne, the hotel charge I found buried beneath a pile of grocery receipts. I remember how he smiled when I asked, the way he said, "It's work, babe, always work," like I was the crazy one for asking. And I remember believing him, because the truth was harder than the lie. The worst part wasn't the affair. It wasn't even Delilah's smugness. It was the realization that I had known, deep down, in the places we keep our fears locked tight. I knew, and I stayed anyway, for Caleb, for the house we built, for the version of us I didn't want to give up on. I looked at my son then, his innocent face stained with confusion, not yet anger, and I felt something shift. I wasn't just mourning Julian. I was mourning the woman I used to be. The one who believed that love meant endurance. The one who thought being quiet was the same as being strong. And then Delilah laughed. Not loud, just a soft, self-satisfied chuckle as she leaned over and whispered something to the woman beside her. Caleb heard it too. His hand tightened. Mom, why is she laughing? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Instead, I stood up, slowly, deliberately. My heels clicked against the floor like punctuation marks. People turned. Even Delilah looked up. But I didn't look at her. I looked at the man standing at the altar, Julian's photograph, framed in lilies and lies, and I walked forward, toward the box. The night before the funeral, I found myself staring at a wooden box I hadn't asked for, hadn't expected, and somehow already hated. Mr. Roland Tate sat across from me at the kitchen table, his glasses low on his nose, his hands folded neatly over Julian's will like it wasn't a bomb about to detonate my last strands of composure. There's a clause, he said quietly, voice low like he was afraid to wake the ghosts in the house. Julian added it just weeks before the accident. I didn't flinch. Not anymore. By then I was numb to surprises, affairs, lies, empty smiles. But this felt different. What kind of clause? I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. Mr. Tate opened the will and slid it toward me. He wanted this delivered to someone named Delilah Hart, publicly, during the service. Of course he did. A man who couldn't stay faithful in life suddenly wanted an audience in death. I didn't touch the papers. What's inside the box? He hesitated. A message, a photograph, his handwriting. It's sealed, but he made it clear it had to be seen by everyone. I stared at the box. Smooth mahogany, polished, heavy, the kind of container people use to preserve valuables or hide sins. Why? I asked. Why humiliate her now, after everything? Mr. Tate met my gaze. He told me he wanted the truth where she couldn't twist it. That stopped me. All these years, Julian had twisted truth like ribbon, wrapping it around moments, decorating deception, turning betrayal into something beautiful. Now in death, he was unraveling it. Do it, I said. Are you sure? He asked, like maybe there was still mercy left in me. I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. And so the next day, as Delilah Hart stood in the sanctuary, basking in her own fiction, Mr. Tate stepped forward. He walked slowly, as if every step toward her carried the weight of what was about to happen. In his hands, that same wooden box. The air shifted. The hush in the church wasn't grief anymore. It was anticipation. Miss Hart, he said, his voice crisp, clear. Julian left this for you. Delilah blinked, confused, then smiled, arrogant, certain. She reached out, her hands soft, her fingers manicured to match her crimson dress. She took the box like it was a love letter. My mother's hand found mine again. I held my breath. Delilah turned the box in her hands, savoring it. She glanced at the crowd, then at me. There was a flicker of triumph in her eyes. Then she opened it. She opened the lid and screamed like someone had stabbed her in the heart. The sound didn't echo. It tore through the silence like glass shattering inside a cathedral. Every head turned. Some gasped. Others flinched. Delilah staggered backward, clutching the wooden box like it had betrayed her. And in a way, it had. Her scream wasn't just pain. It was exposure, humiliation. The unraveling of a fantasy she'd spent years building around whispered promises and hotel room shadows. The box dropped from her hands, hitting the floor with a hollow thud. Its contents spilled slightly, just one photograph, nothing more. But it was enough. She backed away, heels slipping against the polished floor. Her hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes, wide, glossy, betrayed, searched the room for something to hold onto. But there was nothing. No Julian to defend her. No lie strong enough to shield her now. I didn't move. Mr. Tate stood still beside the pulpit, watching her with the calm of a man who knew exactly what this moment would cost her. My mother gripped the edge of the pew. Caleb buried his face into my side, not understanding but sensing the shift. Everyone else watched in stunned silence, caught between horror and morbid fascination. Delilah finally looked down. She bent, trembling, and picked up the photo like it weighed 1,000 pounds. It was her and Julian, on a beach, wrapped in each other's arms, racked, smiling like they belonged to a world where I didn't exist. She turned it over. That's when her knees buckled. "No," she whispered, her voice cracking. "No, no, no." Because on the back, in Julian's handwriting, were 10 words that broke whatever was left of her story. "I never loved you. I just needed to feel wanted." Her lips moved soundlessly. Then she looked at me. Really looked at me. There it was, the fury, the disbelief, the begging for a lie kind of confusion. I held her gaze, steady, not cruel, not triumphant, just done. Delilah dropped the photo again. This time, she didn't pick it up. She turned, stumbling down the aisle, her heels uneven, her posture broken. The red dress that once gleamed now looked gaudy, misplaced, like a costume no one believed in anymore. As she reached the doors, someone in the back row whispered, "My God." The doors slammed behind her like the closing of a chapter. The room remained still. No one spoke. Even the pastor looked unsure of what to say next. Mr. Tate picked up the photograph gently and placed it back in the box. He turned to me, his eyes meeting mine. A small nod, quiet approval, or maybe sympathy. But I wasn't looking for either, because I knew what was coming next. She wasn't the only one Julian left something for. She stood trembling in front of me, mascara streaked, lips parted like she was about to beg for something she wasn't even sure she deserved. "Why?" Delilah asked, voice splintered and hollow. "Why would he do this to me?" I didn't answer right away. I let the silence stretch between us, let her sit in the wreckage of everything she thought she knew. She looked so small then, not the radiant woman in red who had paraded down the aisle like she owned the church, but just a girl, cracked open and confused. I studied her, really looked at her, not with spite, not even pity, just understanding. Because once upon a time, I'd stood where she stood, believing every lie because it was easier than facing the truth. And when I finally spoke, I didn't raise my voice, because he did it to me first. Her breath caught, her hands dropped to her sides. It was like I'd slapped her without lifting a finger. I sat back down. She didn't speak again. She just stared at me, eyes wide, searching for some other villain in the story, someone else to blame. But there was no one left. Only the truth, printed in Julian's handwriting, lingering in her hands like a curse. The church was still. Not a single cough, not a creak of the pews. The people who had been waiting for a spectacle now witnessed something quieter, but far more devastating. My silence had become the loudest voice in the room. Delilah turned, unsteady, and walked down the aisle like she was leaving her own funeral. Every step echoed with finality. Her back was straight, but her heels wobbled. The doors groaned when she pushed them open, and then she was gone. No applause, no gasps, just silence. Until I felt a shift, not in the air, but in the way they looked at me. The same guests who moments ago might have wondered why I hadn't screamed, slapped, or sobbed, now looked at me like I'd just rewritten the definition of dignity. My mother whispered, "You didn't even have to raise your voice." I squeezed her hand, but kept my eyes forward. Mr. Tate remained at the pulpit, unmoved, as if waiting for the room to breathe again. But he wasn't done. He cleared his throat. "There's one more item Julian left behind," he said, his voice calm but edged with something weightier. "And this one wasn't for Miss Hart." He paused, looked directly at me. It was for his wife. I don't cry for Julian anymore. I cry for the woman I used to be, the one who believed love meant endurance, that silence was strength, that if I just gave enough, he'd stay. There's a particular ache that comes not from the betrayal itself, but from the years you spent bending into shapes you thought would make someone love you better. That woman, she lived in the quiet. She smiled through doubt, forgave without apology, and swallowed her voice so he could feel like a man. I don't miss Julian. I miss the version of myself who hadn't learned how love can lie with its hands full of flowers, who still thought promises were sacred, who hadn't yet looked in the mirror and wondered when she disappeared. He left no letter for me, no explanation, just a silence that felt at first like a punishment. But now I see it for what it was, permission, to stop waiting for an answer, to stop needing one, to live. Caleb asked me last night if I hated his father. I told him no, because hate keeps the door open. It keeps you circling the same story, retelling the same wound. And I'm done living in rooms Julian built. I'm building new ones now. Some days, I still feel the ghost of what we were, the Sunday mornings, the worn-out kitchen rug, the way he used to say my name like a question. But I don't invite the ghost to stay. I let it pass through, take what it needs, and keep moving. Maybe forgiveness isn't a grand declaration. Maybe it's just a quiet refusal to carry someone else's choices anymore. I don't need revenge. I don't need anyone to hurt like I did. I needed the truth, and I got it. Now I need peace. And that finally is mine. So if you've ever been her, the woman who stayed too long, who loved too hard, who broke in silence, this story is for you. If you've ever held your breath just to keep the peace, or dimmed your light so someone else could shine, I see you. You're not alone, and you don't have to stay in that story any longer. If any part of this felt like your story too, leave me a comment. Tell me what you would have done, or maybe what you didn't get to do. And if you want more truths like this, unforgiving, unfiltered, but finally free, stay with me. Subscribe to Revenge Her Way. Sometimes the softest voice carries the sharpest blade.